I've seen people where they have agendas and there's like 20 points on the agenda and they're like, we never get through all the 20 points. No, you don't, because there's only really like the top 3 things that move a practice forward is financial, team engagement, and the practice growth. That's it.
Welcome to CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I'm your host, Brandy Mabra. It's time to show up as a confident leader to create a practice and life you love.
Hello, welcome to another episode of CEO Conversations, the private practice podcast. I am Brandy Mabra, and I am loving this conversation. I don't think I've ever had this conversation before, and we're talking about team meetings. Yes, team meetings, productive team meetings. So there is all kinds of information. Like if you go out into the interwebs of things, there's all kinds of agendas. I know even with the clients that I work with inside of Private Practice CEO, they get agenda templates. And so there's a really great tool that I'm actually going to walk us through called the CEO dashboard. And there's a specific tab, part of the CEO dashboard that all of our clients get that talks about leadership team meetings, because there is a difference when you're meeting with leadership versus normal non-leadership team members who might be a leader in their job, but not necessarily leading like a team. So I'm going to walk through some of the different nuances when it comes to making sure that your team meetings are productive, that they're not a value add. I have definitely been in all the spaces, especially on the corporate side, where you just get meeting after meeting after meeting, and then there's a meeting about the meeting, and then there's a meeting after the meeting about the meeting, and I mean just all day meetings. So that's not what this is about. If you're going to have a meeting, it needs to definitely help move the practice forward, help move the team forward, and it should not be where you're talking about things that could easily have been an email. So the best types of meetings that you can have right off the bat would be strategic type of meetings. Strategy meetings, even when we're talking about $10,000 task, whenever you're doing strategic planning, that is one of the higher dollar values of sweat equity that you can put inside of your practice, right? Because you're moving with strategy, you're thinking about things from a place of intention, you're getting to the root cause of problems, you're asking what's working, what's not working, and it's not just a bunch of updates, right? And so the whole point of strategic type of meetings is for you to make sure that your team is on the same page and that there's plans that are being created when you're meeting. So that's when we're talking about the productive meeting. The ultimate productive meeting is always strategy meetings. The other piece of it is the cadence of a meeting as well. So you should be meeting with your team on a normal basis. If you are not meeting with your team on a normal basis, a lot of things can be left to interpretation. They don't necessarily have the vision that they need to have. I know I talked to get your practice to run without you. What that means is that if you step away, so if you go on vacation, if you want to take time off, if something comes up, whether you're there or not, your team needs to have the resources that they need to be successful. It's not about you just being completely aloof about what's happening in the practice and you just lose touch. That's not what that means. That's not what that type of freedom means. So I want to make sure that we're perfectly clear with that. When you meet with your team, you're giving them the vision of what you want things to look like, right? You're giving them the outcome of what things need to look like in those meetings. And then they are helping you formulate, or they are formulating really, the implementation plan, how they're going to get there, what methods they're going to use, the research maybe that needs to happen. Your job is to provide the metric, right, for them to understand, like, this is what success looks like. So, and when we're thinking about the meetings, it's very easy to get off track. So making sure that you have agendas inside of your meetings, which is what I'm going to walk through for what I have right here. So I'm going to walk you through an agenda. I'll walk through some of the ways that this agenda could grow if you want to meet with specific team members when it comes to this agenda. But the agenda that for today's purposes, it's a CEO agenda for your leadership team. So if you have an office manager, if you have a practice manager, a COO, a director of operations, an operations director, an operations manager, a clinical director, a clinical manager, even a clinical supervisor who has higher level of leadership, not just signing off on documentation and doing training, then true leadership team, then here's a really great agenda for you. What I find and how this came to be is that a lot of times people get into meetings and they will talk about all the hot topics, all the fires that they need to put out of all the things, and they never get to the most important topics. So this agenda is actually set up for you to talk about the most important things that matter inside of a practice. And then if you want to fill the rest of the time, you can talk about whatever you want. So if so-and-so is quitting, or so-and-so said this about this person, or so-and-so came and took an hour of my time, or, oh my gosh, I'm so frustrated, or I can't believe this, then you can do all of that after you talk about these topics. So number one is for key initiatives, right? So the number one is the financial state of the union, right? So it is a financial state update, which means that you're talking about the financial health of the practice, right? So you're talking through, what does collections look like? What does AR look like? What's happening with the front desk? How are things going? How are things moving? What is working? What's not working? How are things flowing? We talked about if there's a certain strategy, how's the strategy working? Is there anything that needs to be pivoted, right? So it's all about the financial health of the practice. So that is number one. The second part of this is there is reporting. So for example, one of my clients, what we just implemented is her practice manager now has an action plan that she goes through every single week pertaining to these topics and provides the appropriate reporting, whether if it's screenshots or if it's updating and actually entering in the metrics. So that way my client has all of this information before they even sit down, and they can actually talk through things. So another piece of the financial update would be visits. So encounters, appointments, whatever that is, testing, procedures, whatever your main revenue stream metric is, then you're talking through what is happening. Are we on point? Are we off track? Are we on goal? When these conversations are missing out of either a meeting, or these conversations are missing where you're not looking at that reporting, or your team is not sending you this reporting, all of a sudden you look up and you're like, man, our schedules are not full. All of a sudden you look up and the money isn't coming in the way that it used to, right? All of a sudden you look up and my team hasn't collected copays in like 2 months. So it's very easy to lose track, and it's very easy for your leadership team. The other piece of this is that your leadership team can get pulled into the weeds just as quick as you can. And sometimes they're not as equipped to pull themselves out. So when you are purposefully meeting and you're having these types of conversations, or they're creating action plans, or they're sending you these types of reports and giving you updates on them, you are telling them exactly what to pay attention to, which is financial. The financial health of a practice, whether you feel good about it or you don't feel good about it, is the lifeline of the business. And I guarantee you, if you were to sit down with each and every one of your team members and ask them, which one would you rather for me to focus on? See patients all day or making sure that the financial health of the practice is secure? They're going to tell you, please make sure that the financial health of the practice is secure, so that way they can continue to come to work and they can continue to get paid. That's the number one, is the financial state update. The second one is the team status update. So when we're thinking about everything that's happening with team, we're looking at team engagement, we're thinking about team culture, and talking about it. So the reason why is because your team culture, your team engagement will make or break your practice. You do not want people who are just showing up and collecting a check. You want to make sure that people are fully on board with what you are building and the mission and vision that you have for your practice, right? And so when you're talking through these things, you're getting a very good feel for the pulse of the organization. How are things doing? A lot of times as your practice grows, it's easy to lose touch with the people who are working inside of your practice because they talk to your managers more than what they talk to you, right? And so there's nothing wrong with this. Your job is to lead the managers. Your job is to, again, not be aloof, but sometimes those intimate conversations are happening with the manager or the leader versus you. And you still need to be privy to it. So that way you understand what's happening inside of your practice, and you can make decisions accordingly. So some of the things that you can talk about in this topic would be like the progress of team hires. How are things going? Especially if you're no longer the one first line doing interviews, especially when it's a critical position. If there's certain parts that you have when it comes to the interview process, making sure that everyone's on the same page. Also, again, the team engagement pulse. So how is the morale? anything that you need to know about? Is there anybody who maybe requires a, hey, hi, how are you, from you as the owner? They're really giving you the insights for how are people feeling working inside of your practice, right? So having that type of information and intel is priceless. The third one would be the practice growth, right? So what is the status? So are there key partnerships and collaborations that you need to know about? Are there key partnerships and collaborations that you need to update your team about? Making sure, again, all of these are growth conversations where you're actually moving the practice forward and making sure that you're setting up the practice's future and not just looking at what's happening now, especially in today's economy, right? So these conversations are even more important because everybody knows everything around us changes right now on a day-to-day basis, right? And so the economy is changing. There's one day we're talking about recession. The next day we're talking about things are fine. There's talks about the stock market. So your patients are seeing these things too. And so it's important for you to have these types of conversations with your leadership team so you can stay on top of it, right? So making sure that you're setting up the growth of your practice and the future growth of your practice is a non-negotiable. So the three areas is a financial state update, a team status update, and then the third one is the practice growth update, right? So this is making sure that everything is moving in the right direction. There's a really great book. It's one of my favorites. It's called A CEO Does These Three Things. And it's not the 50 million things, but it's the three things. And so the author talks to the financial piece, the hiring piece, the team culture piece, because it's important for you to understand it's the people that help you move your practice forward. It's the financial health of your practice that helps move your practice forward. And it's the innovation that you have within your practice that helps you move your practice forward. So inside of your meetings, it's important for you not to talk about fluff, not to get swooped up into the weeds of the day-to-day, because you can fill up 3 hours, 4 hours of a meeting time where you're not having the right types of conversations as well. The other thing is it's mentoring, right? So in these types of meetings, especially if you're meeting with your non-leadership teams, then it's a great opportunity for you to meet. So when you're not meeting with leadership teams and you're meeting with non-team members, so let's say that you haven't hired your first leader yet, then inside those conversations, so if you're meeting with someone at the front desk, same conversation, right? So how are things going financially? How do you feel about collecting copays? What are the outstanding balances? Making sure that they understand their processes and systems. What's working, what's not working? Going back to, there was an episode that I talked about with billing, right? And so any kind of denials. So are subscriber IDs getting put in? How comfortable are they asking for money? So when we're thinking about the financial status or the financial status update, you can talk to your front desk. You can talk to your biller. Same conversations. How are things going with billing? What's the status? What's the strategy to make sure that the money's coming in and that the claims are getting into the system? When we're thinking about the visits, talking to your providers, talking to your admin teams. Are the schedules filled? Is the provider comfortable with the quota that needs to happen? Are they doing the marketing that they need to do? Is there anything that's coming up for them? The documentation, how's their time management? So you can have those conversations when it comes to the financial state. When team and culture, team meetings, how's everybody feeling today? How are things? What can we do better? What are we doing well? This is where you can send out team surveys, right? So it's important for you to still have a good pulse of things where you're just going straight to the team compared to when you have a leader. A leader's going to be able to have some of those conversations for you, but the conversations never go away. So when you're having team meetings, instead of filling it with just stupid updates, really step into, is there a topic that you could teach on? Right? So same thing with your leadership team. Is there a topic that you can teach on? Is there something that they might be struggling with? Is there an update to a policy and procedure? Do you need to work through a policy and procedure? Is there a better way to do a procedure? All of these things are more high-level conversations that you can have inside of your meetings. With the practice growth, if there is a particular provider who's a rock star, or a particular admin who is more on top of things operationally, you can meet with them. They can help you do research. Maybe they can come to meetings with you. Maybe they can get some ideas for partnerships and collaborations that might be out in the community. If you have a marketing person, you're having those conversations. What partnerships can we form? What collaborations can we do? Who's a good venture for us to maybe jump into? So these are high level conversations. They're not just in the weeds conversations of updates that could just be bullet points on an email. It's a different thought process, but once you implement it and once you have these types of conversations with your team, people have a better understanding of what to focus on. You're teaching them how to think. You're getting them out of the weeds. And again, you're showing them what the outcome is versus just how to do a task, right? So that would be how you can run a productive meeting. The other piece of it would be time, right? So if you're supposed to meet for 60 minutes, then meet for 60 minutes. If you need to have someone assign someone the timer as the timer person, if there's certain conversations that need to take up certain amounts of time. So if it's 10 minutes, then making sure that you're sending out the agenda ahead of time. People are coming prepared to the meeting. They know that they have a spot on the agenda. If you're not too sure what to talk about, then you can always send out the agenda to the team and have the team add agenda items. Again, you want to be aware of adding agenda items that could just be emails. I've seen people where they have agendas and there's like 20 points on the agenda and they're like, we never get through all the 20 points. No, you don't, because there's only really like the top 3 things that move a practice forward is financial, team engagement, and the practice growth. That's it. That's really it. So if you have 20 different things that are ending up on the agenda because the team wants to talk about it, then, pick the most pressing ones and find another way. Sometimes for meetings, you do need like a sub meeting, but it shouldn't be where it's always the sub meetings. I believe the more meetings you have, it's probably more of a sign of inefficiency. The other piece of it is looking at, can you lessen the cadence? There was an interview that I did with one of my clients, Courtney Curtis, and when we were talking about her cadences for her leadership team, right now she meets with her leadership team monthly. She's actually trying to get her leadership team to meet with them every other month, right? So that way they can still be up to date. So she's trying to figure out more efficient ways to communicate. So that way she doesn't have to continuously meet with them. So the cadence piece, I would say at least quarterly, you're having these types of conversations. However, in the beginning, you might need to have more meetings, but if you can find other ways to communicate, especially in today's time, so there's videos that you can do. So if you wanted to do a state of the update, if there is a status of a dashboard where people just update the dashboard, that's another way of communicating. If there is a project management system, so if there's certain project, people can go and put their status of what's happening with the project, any questions that they might have. So there's other ways that you communicate outside of a meeting. But again, those meetings need to be very high level. They need to be strategic. The agenda points need to be what is actually going to move the practice forward, not just fluff, not just stupidness. Yeah. So if you are in a place where you feel like you need some additional support for how you can lead a high performance team and making sure that you're setting yourself up to have team members that aren't driving you crazy and can actually get the job done and help you get your practice to a place where it can run without you, then I am hosting the Private Practice CEO Lunch and Learn series, which is happening May 12th through May 16th. So it's 5 days teaching and training where you're going to make CEO moves that will help you get back more time, be able to make more money, and get out of the weeds of your practice. So if this sounds like an amazing opportunity, then go ahead and see the show notes so you can register. I'm going to lovingly encourage you to go ahead and sign up for the VIP version of the Lunch and Learn, because you'll get to be able to get your questions answered, be able to get coached by me, you get some additional tools. There's a pop-up community. There's just some amazing things too. So if you want to get more time back, you want to get some things off of your plate and definitely make more money, then come spend the week with me. May 12th through May 16th. So make sure you go get your ticket today. All right. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Thanks for listening today. I hope you enjoyed the episode and it empowers you as the CEO of your practice. If you enjoyed the podcast, please make sure you subscribe, share the message, and leave a review. If you want more information and support in growing and scaling your practice, click the link in the show notes to take advantage of our free resources or apply to work with me directly. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.